My name is Faye Walter. I am the Academic Technology Services Director for Dedman College, and I'm joined by Christina Churchill. She is the Academic Technology Services Director for Cox. So we are going to talk about solutions for digitizing your whiteboard in the SMUFlex classroom. So each room has a different solution. Most rooms will not have more than one solution, and definitely no rooms have all of the solutions. So you are somewhat limited in the equipment that is in your room. But we're going to show you how to use each of the possibilities so that you're prepared when you get in your room. So one way to find out what is in your room, other than going to your room and seeing it, which you should all be doing, is to check the room search on SMU. So if you just search room search, you can find your building and room and see what is in it. And if this is not up to date, you can also check that classroom upgrade project. It will tell you what is going in each room. So the first thing I'm going to show you is using the whiteboard with the new wall-mounted camera. So in this case, there is a wall-mounted camera that just points at the whiteboard, which I am going to do right now. Each room that has this option will have a preset that points at the whiteboard, and additionally, you can zoom it in as you like. So if I am in a room with this solution, the camera is pointed at the whiteboard, and I use regular markers on a regular whiteboard to write what I need to write. You will have to check in with your remote students to make sure that you don't get too far off camera and that they can see it. But it is just a camera, high definition, pointed at your whiteboard, capturing what you write. That one's pretty simple. And as we move along, if there are any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. We'll move through the demo of each, and then we'll answer questions at the end. So next, if your classroom says new, let me find one so you can see it, new whiteboard camera, that is the Captivo. And I'm going to have Christina show you how that works.
Okay, so I'm going to actually point. I have a webcam on a stand. So I'm going to point the webcam so you can kind of see what it looks like as far as the physical appearance of it. So on the whiteboard, you see that arm up there. That is the Captivo camera that will capture the digital writing. So in order to do that, I'm going to move this back this way a little bit. There's a little bit of a setup that needs to happen. Not too complicated, but there is a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. In order to use that, you will need to open up a browser. And then from here, you type in Captivo.live. One thing that I didn't point out is right next to someplace near the camera, there is a sign with a code. It's a red and black sign with a code. That code is needed to put into this configuration. So you type in your name here, and as you can see, if you do it once, it'll remember your name. So you type in your name here, and then you type in the code. And the code for this particular camera was RBJRPX. And so I typed that in, and then I click on View Board. At that point, there is a, they're telling me to push a button, and I'm going to move this camera. Let me see if I can move it this way. So it's a little tricky to show. But right there, if you can see, I have a little button right here, and it's flashing, so I will need to press the button. And hopefully you're still seeing my, my screen at this point. At this point, my whiteboard shows up. Now, I don't have anything on my whiteboard, so I'm going to go ahead and write on it to show you what goes on. So, as you can see, and you probably can see me writing, there's a little bit of a delay, but it does pick up exactly what I wrote, and it's pretty crystal clear as far as copying over. It also is sensitive to color. So right now I'm going to use a purple. Here's my pie chart in purple. And you can see from the screen share that it shows up there as purple as well. Now, something to note on this is if I am used to pointing to things, so I'm talking about this part of the pie graph or so forth, you can't see me pointing on it. I guess you could kind of see my red hand for a second, but you can't see me pointing on it. So what's going to be important as far as adjusting what you do is if I want to talk about a specific pie part, I have to somehow draw it. So if I want to talk about this, I'm going to draw the arrow so I can bring attention to it, not only to my face-to-face students, but my online students know what in the world I'm talking about. Now, the pretty neat thing about this pretty neat feature is if I erase, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I don't want that arrow there anymore. And I do want to add a couple things on here. I'm going to talk about this graph. And I don't have more than 2 colors, but so you see the 2 graphs. Now, there is a timeline on here. So down here at the bottom of my screen, you see this button that says timeline, and I can click on it. And I can jump back and forth between the timeline. So this is when I wrote something with the arrow. The second I erase, what will happen is it'll create a new sheet. So I erase the arrow here, and so if you notice on this one, it doesn't have the arrow. The new sheet has been created. Now, the other thing, other option that you have also is to share this as a PDF. So for example, if I want to, I can download it or email it to my students or post it on Canvas. So it'll keep kind of a collection of all of your whiteboards. So that is an option that you have as well. Other things to keep in mind, I think it has a great opportunity, and it does, like I can, if you notice when I write, it doesn't show my hand as I'm writing. So they can quickly see. Also, the other thing is because I'm projecting it in my classroom, you're not limited anymore to only what they can see on the whiteboard because it's projected at a larger screen up above them. So that's kind of a quick preview of the Captivo. Again, not all the classrooms have it, but if you do, you have a great opportunity to digitize your whiteboard.
Thank you. One thing I do want to add to that, so if you're in a room, so you can see that Christina's Captivo is on a whiteboard that is the correct size. But if you're in a room with a long whiteboard and the Captivo is on one side, you will see where your writing space is. It will not capture the whole whiteboard. But it is a large section of the whiteboard. Okay, so our next solution is the Epson Interactive Projector. These were not new installations. They already existed in many classrooms. So if you see Interactive Projector on your room search details, you will have the Epson Interactive Projector. So similarly to the Captivo, you do have to share your screen, and you will open a browser. And in this case, you type in an IP address that is on the wall behind you. if you can type correctly. And you will select Whiteboard. Now the difference in this and the Captivo is that this pin code changes daily. So if you are using the interactive whiteboard, I would set this up before class begins so that you're ready to go, and just leave it minimized so that you can pull it up when you're ready to write on the whiteboard. So now I'm sending my camera over there so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm still sharing my screen. And then I use the digital pen to press this share button here, start sharing this whiteboard. You can change it to presentation mode so that students can't get in and write on top of it. And you can click start. So once you do that, it'll have the pin code displayed. You'll need to walk back to the computer and type in that pin code. And connect. So now you should see my whiteboard on the screen. Yes? Christina, can you confirm?
Yes, yes. I see your whiteboard. I didn't see any writing.
Oh, I have not written yet. Okay.
Okay.
So if you can see in my video, on the side, we have options for different colors, different sizes, highlight. So if I want to draw a graph, so that's different sizes and colors. You should see everything I do. I can also highlight an area. I can erase one portion of it, or I can clear the whole screen. Additionally, I can add a new screen. There's a plus sign at the bottom, so that adds a new sheet where I can write more things. And then if I need to reference what I've written before, I simply go back to that. You can add multiple, and it just keeps adding new screens for you to move back and forth between. Like the Captivo, you can share this with yourself after class. So if you click the mail button, you'll be able to put in your email address and email it to yourself.
We did have a couple questions come through, but I didn't know, does that wrap yours up, Faye?
We have two more, but we can get to questions now and then move on.
Yeah, just to keep the train of thought. So on the Captivo, I did get a question. Can you share the entire deck, or do you have to go page by page? So when I did that share button, it gave me an option to do the deck, or I can do a snapshot. If I do the snapshot, it will take that one whiteboard page that I have. If I decide to do the whole deck, it'll do all of the whiteboard pages all together. So you do have that option. And then the other question that came in, and this is kind of a good point of discussion, is if there's no digital whiteboard, the only capture is via Zoom. And so I would say my recommendation would be, if you don't have any of these tools in your classroom, to have your own device. So for example, if you have an iPad that you're able to write, you can use that to display any type of writing. If you have a Surface, you can do the same. In order to do that, what you would do is still log in as your host on your lectern PC, and then join from your iPad using the Zoom app and the meeting code and passcode. And so you would enter that information in, and at that point you can share the whiteboard and write. So there are, if you don't have any, which most of the areas do have something, but if you don't have anything, that is an option as well.
Yes. Also, if that question was meant that you can email it to yourself, capturing it by saving it after, yes. If you're writing on the board with the wall-mounted camera, you clearly can't save that, but it will be on your recording in the video. So the next thing I'm going to show you is one of the document cameras. So again, every room will have one of these options. The rooms that were previously event spaces and have been turned into classrooms, they won't have an actual whiteboard. They will have the document camera. So there are two ways potentially to share the document camera. If you share the screen and your document camera in your classroom has a software, it will be on the desktop. That will open the image. This one does not. So what I will do instead is share screen, and I'll select advanced and content from a second camera. And now instead of a screen that is being shared, it is my document camera. The one I am on right now is very easily moved, and I probably need to adjust some lighting in here so that the shadow is not in the way. So now you have a stack of papers underneath your document camera, and you can write. That's a terrible M, but this is me writing with a marker. You should also be able to see a pen, but depending on what you're doing, you might want the thicker marker. But anything you write underneath your paper, I love these graphs, don't I? They'll be shown to the students on Zoom because you're sharing the content from a second camera as your screen. They'll be on the board or on the projector screen in the room because the same, and they'll show up on your recording. So we just have one more to show you, and then we'll just do an open Q&A. So this last one that Christina is going to show you is not common around campus, but it will work the same way it would if you were sharing from an iPad or your own Surface using the Zoom whiteboard.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of point to it so then that way you can see it a little, but this right here is a monitor that's a touch screen, but it does require for you to use the stylus. Let's see if I can get this readjusted. And so on this, I've got this whiteboard and I have a pen. And so what I can do is I click on, from your Zoom controls, I click on share and whiteboard. And then at this point, I just take the pen and I can draw. So I can, does that look okay? I can change the color. I don't like that color. And I have the ability to draw a graph.
I'm actually not seeing that.
Really? Let me try it again. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So Zoom makes things disappear. So sometimes I just can't show you what my little menu is, but all I did was I clicked on screen share and I selected whiteboard. And by the way, you can do that with any device, select whiteboard. But the nice thing with this monitor is that I can take the pen and start writing on it. And so I can select a different color and I can write. Now, there are some other options. This is just sharing in from the Zoom share. I also have the ability to share from a PowerPoint or Word. So let me show you really quick how to do that. So if I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and launch PowerPoint. I'm going to open up a new PowerPoint and create one really quick. It does work better if you have at least 2 slides. Okay, so now at this point I have 2 options. I can select draw, and I can draw with touch. And then from here I can select the color and draw. I can also go to slideshow and I can play my slideshow from the beginning in presentation mode. And so now I have a full screen. And down here at the bottom left, there is a selection for a pen. So I can select pen. I can also, by the way, select laser pointer or highlighter if I'm doing a presentation. But I'm going to select pen, and now I have the ability, oops, to write and to draw. I can also change my colors. If I go back here and select a different color, I can make a graph and so forth. So that is an option as well in presentation mode. Some of the faculty have brought up, well, if I use this, you know, one of the things that you'll have to consider for your online students or your remote students is they can only see one thing at a time. So if you're used to doing a PowerPoint presentation and then writing on the board, you need to consider your students, and you will have to navigate, okay, right now they need to see the PowerPoint, and now they need to see the writing on the board. So you'll have to kind of think through that. In this instance, for example, if you're using PowerPoint, what I recommended for faculty to do is insert a blank slide. So let's say they, the first 3 or 4 slides have content, and then they would enter a blank slide because that's where they like to write it. So then that way they're not having to navigate back and forth. So just kind of things to consider. If you are using different tools like the Captivo or like the document camera, just consider what should your online student be looking at the time, and making sure that you're sharing the correct content. It'll just be a little bit tricky, but something to consider. I don't have anything else. Faye, do you have anything?
No, so those are the options. Again, your room will have one. You unfortunately do not get to choose. It just depends on where your class is. They all show you writing. They, there might be, like Christina was mentioning, you might have to choose between showing a PowerPoint and then switching, because you can't have this side by side in many rooms. But you have an option in every room to write and have your students see it. So again, Christina mentioned, and I would second, just check in with your students, make sure that they are seeing what you need them to see. And we will open it up for any questions, specific questions about the certain technologies or general questions about writing in class this way.
No questions?
How many of you have been to your rooms and tried out your whiteboard solutions already? All right, we have at least one.
Oh, yes, we have one. Okay.
You see there is a hand raised, okay.
Yeah, I just gave him permission to talk if you want to ask your question.
Hi, Christina. No,
Hi.
Thank you very much, and you helped me before. So I, in Collins, the only display we have is the one in the speaker pult. We don't have the alternative, and there's a challenge is a little bit with the writing with the pen. So doing something like you just did, that works. But if there's a active class discussion and you want to note things like I usually do on the board behind me, it's not easy to get the right quality out. At least not to me. Maybe it's just my limitation of writing on a board like this.
No, I completely agree. I know that getting adjusted in using the Como is a little bit tricky. One thing that has worked really well this past spring, so we didn't have all this fancy stuff, and what some faculty found was that they were writing a lot, right? So graphs, it's too hard to do. But if you were writing a lot on concepts, even like filling out columns of things and students are interacting with what you're writing, what you can do instead of physically writing is typing it. So even bringing up a Word document, making it large so everybody can see. And if you're accustomed to writing specific words, think about like, well, maybe I can type this, because then that takes away your handwriting, penmanship, and things like that. It's really clear for the students, both online and face-to-face. So, you know, I'm not saying it's a perfect solution. I know it is not a perfect solution, but it's just kind of adapting to what we have available to try to make it work.
Yeah, I play around with that. I will try this. I usually also have now PowerPoints prepared, and I write on the PowerPoints like you described there before, which already takes something away. So there's a framework already, which makes it easier. And I will see if I type or just see, you know, if I can prepare more in the way that I don't have to write that much.
Yes.
Let's play around with that.
Yeah, and you know, if you're using your PowerPoint, even like doing the shell of a table, let's say, and you want students to give you the pros and cons of something, you know, you can have the table already created and the word pro and cons already, and then maybe you're just either typing in the material or.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And I probably can prepare there a little bit more even, but that's exactly what I did, that I had tables, etc. So give already a little bit of framework.
Yeah, hopefully that helps. The other thing that we didn't really talk about, and this is just something to consider, don't know if it's going to be an option, but you do have the collaboration tool if you have online students. So when I shared the whiteboard, that there is a way to annotate so everybody can annotate. I know it's something that we really haven't explored that much. I don't think many use that option, but just know that it's there, that if you wanted to do something a lot more collaborative where everybody's writing on the same whiteboard, you do have those abilities through Zoom. Just throwing that out there, it's something extra, but it could be a good feature. Hopefully that answered your questions.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll give it just a couple more minutes for more questions to come in. And again, this was recorded, so if you want to, once it's posted, you can go back and just watch the section on your equipment that's in your room. And I hope you go in your room and test it out and try it before Monday.